The sun rises over a snow-covered plain, painting the sky in hues of yellow and orange. Then a time-lapse of day turning to night, with heavy clouds traveling over a run-down wooden lodge.
It's always interesting to me that I get the question a lot, like, what do bats do? But then when I work with other animals, you never really get like, what do bears do, or what do wolves do, or what do butterflies do?
A large bright full moon partly hidden behind a mountain, peeking through drifting clouds. Location, Yellowstone National Park. Next, bats flying out of a wooden lodge covered in snow, followed by a shot of two gloved hands cradling a tiny bat.
We often do this when we go down on the scale of body size for wildlife. They have to have a purpose or a function that benefits humans. But here in a national park, these bats they have the right to exist. They're a wildlife resource that belong to the people, and they're a very unique and diverse resource.
Title: Before It's Too Late, a look at bats in Greater Yellowstone.
Nighttime. A man wearing a headband with a small torch attached at the front, observing a tiny bat that he holds in his gloved hands.
John Triner, Wildlife Health Program, Yellowstone National Park.
So I got involved in doing bat work, I think in 2010. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a bat researcher in the East, and he told me about this strange disease, a fungal disease that was killing off bats in the East.
A sequence of pictures showing hibernating bats with white fuzz present on their muzzle and wings.
It's called white nose syndrome. It's a disease that has just decimated bat populations in the eastern United States and Canada.
Lori Hanauska Brown, Non-Game Bureau Chief, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks.
It's slowly been marching its way across the states and has been detected now as close as South Dakota and Wyoming. We know that in the eastern states, because to some extent bats hibernate there in very large, close clusters, they can move this fungus or transmit it between each other pretty easily.
A cluster of bats hibernating upside down at close proximity to one another. Then, a picture of another hibernating bat with symptoms of white nose syndrome.
The fungus operates in such a way that it tends to wake the bats up during the hibernation period because it's an irritant. And as they try to groom that off of themselves, they're burning a lot of calories and fat stores that they had to get them through the entire winter. What we know about bats in the western states is pretty limited. So with a disease like white nose syndrome that has killed 7 million bats in the eastern states, we kind of want to know what we had pre-disease. You get that information by looking for animals in the winter, monitoring maternity colonies, and just putting dots on a map as to where we have populations.
John Triner, pointing at a multicolored map.
For Yellowstone's Wildlife Health Program, we had essentially no information on bats in Yellowstone.
A river flowing gently at night. Then, two people with torches lit up, holding bats up to the light with their gloved hands and studying them.
Our first objective was finding hibernacula in the park, and to do this we started capturing bats and putting radio transmitters on those bats and then tracking them.
A gloved hand releases a bat, which flies off into the night.
We did that across summer months, but the focus was if we could get transmitters on bats late in the season, like October, that would tell us whether they might be going to hibernation sites. And then we could identify these hibernacula and monitor.
Thermal video footage of bats flying in and out of a building.
Tongue River Reservoir, Montana.
Two women stand in the water near the banks of a gently flowing river, planting a tall pole in the ground. Then they fix a mist net between two poles and take debris out of it. Next, nighttime. One of the women wearing gloves and a headband light carefully untangles a bat from the net and measures it with the help of a ruler. Then the bat is released.
There's a couple different ways that you can catch bats. The most common one that's used is a mist net. So it's just like a bird mist net, which is again a fine, very fine mesh net set up between two poles. And if they don't echolocate their way around it, they fly into it and they get all entangled. And then we can untangle them and take the measurements we need.
Time-lapse of mist drifting over a vast snowy landscape. Then a series of pictures showing bat roosts, such as the broken window panes of a building, followed by a tiled roof.
But we did get several animals in September and October, and they were not leaving the park despite really cold temperatures and very little insect prey. Once those transmitters failed and we found the roosts of these bats, we started putting out acoustic detectors. and then we were recording species. And we've been recording them in every month of the year across the winter, even on nights where the temperatures are below zero.
Bats fly out of a tiled roof. A man in an overgrown garden drives a stake into the soil by striking it with a hammer. Then he fixes a tall metal pole over the stake and mounts a microphone at the top.
Eli Lee, Yellowstone bat researcher, Yellowstone National Park.
So the acoustic recorders are set up so that they are triggered by the echolocation calls of the bats in the frequency range that bats use. Once the bat makes a pass, the recording device will record the bat. Then we can use that information to identify the bat to a particular species.
He twists the cable around the pole and ties it securely close to the ground. Sound waves appear on a tablet. Next, a series of pictures of bats.
We have identified 13 bat species in the park between either mist net surveys or getting high quality echolocation calls that can be identified to a particular species. I think an important thing that people don't know about bats is how social they are. They form these large aggregations and they come back year after year, and they're in these building attics. These are all females. There's no males in these attics when we capture these bats.
Bats flying out of pipes located under the roof of a tiled building.
And they come back year after year, and they're very long-lived, and they have a single offspring that they put a lot of investment and care into.
Austin Wog, Yellowstone bat researcher, Yellowstone National Park.
They have really interesting kind of roost dynamics, and a lot of times they'll flock together.
Austin opens his palm to reveal a microscopic pit tag. Then, a picture of antennas in the form of small boxes with wires attached to the ceiling of a wooden structure, followed by a photograph of a person bending over a laptop.
And so with this project, we basically have pit tags inside the bats and then antennas throughout the entire attic. And so every time a bat flies by one of these antennas, we get the date, we get the time, we get the unique identification number of that bat, and then we also get what antenna it was detected on. And so we get these detections, we get up to 100 bats 4 times each second. So we get just millions and millions and millions of detections. And you can actually see bats hanging out around the same antennas to each other.
Clusters of bats huddling together on specific areas of the wooden roof.
And you can actually see these kind of relationships forming. So it's kind of like a fun thing that nobody's really talked about. It's like, do bats have friends? And you can actually kind of see these relationships, and it's like, yeah, these bats do like hanging out with each other.
A tiny bat climbing over a gloved human hand.
And with that information, we can identify whether the same individuals are coming back to the park. So are they showing fidelity? We can identify when bats in general are coming back to that roost and when they are departing. So we get some sense of productivity. And this will be important if white nose syndrome hits these bats hard. We'll see this data start to change.
Black and white footage of an old feature film. Title card reads, Majestic Pictures presents The Vampire Bat. A man in a suit walks carefully behind a car when a huge bat the size of an eagle appears from behind a tree and attacks him.
The misconceptions of bats are varied and many.
That bats are blind or blind as a bat. Bats can see pretty well.
Some people say bats fly into people's hair. Definitely not a thing. They don't want to be in your hair or really anywhere near you.
Film footage continues. A bald man with a crooked nose wearing a long black coat straightens up, then looks menacingly through an open door.
Certainly one of them is that we have vampire bats everywhere, and they suck your blood, which is not true. Vampire bats are found only in South America. Another really common myth is that all bats you see have rabies.
The numbers of bats that actually have rabies are a lot lower than people think.
And I think people often think of bats as flying mice or rats with wings, and they are fundamentally different. Their whole life history is, it's the long game versus rodents that don't live very long, have a lot of offspring, cause a lot of damage, and they get into your stuff.
A woman sitting in the dark inside a roost. She makes notes on a piece of paper, illuminated by her headband light.
State agencies are trying really hard to educate the public on bats and to make sure that message that bats are really ecologically and economically important is out there, and to kind of tone down that bats are scary sort of mentality.
Two gloved hands cradle a tiny bat, while another person wipes over it gently with a cotton bud.
They actually serve a really important ecological purpose across the range. In the western states and in much of the United States, they're just really important to reducing insects or pest species.
Sequence of shots showing insects on the surface of rivers and wetlands.
So a bat, even a little teeny one, can eat 4,000 mosquitoes over the course of an evening. So they're voracious little insectivores. And not only do they eat mosquitoes, which none of us really like, they also eat a lot of forest pests.
View of a starry sky.
In Montana, bats annually contribute $680 million in agricultural pest control services.
It's really difficult to predict exactly what the disappearance of any species might have in terms of our livelihoods or, what we're used to.
A hilly landscape at night with bats darting past in the distance.
Sometimes we don't really notice the disappearance of that species until they're gone.
Film by Jessica Portuondo. Additional cinematography Colleen Harvey, Blake Fajak, and Yellowstone National Park. Additional photos Marvin Moriarty, USFWS, Jonathan Mays, Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, R. Andrew King, USFWS. Archive.org footage, Nosferatu 1922, The Devil Bat 1940, The Vampire Bat 1933, music by Lacalicio and MV_production. Special thanks to Yellowstone National Park, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, Montana State University, School of Film and Photography and Dennis Egg. Made possible by a donation from Canon USA Incorporated, through Yellowstone Forever.